All right, it says we're live, Dusty. Welcome everybody to Great Lakes Shipwrecks Live, our first show of 2022. I'm Brendon Baillod. I'm the creator and host of the Great Lakes Shipwreck Research Group on Facebook, where hopefully you're watching this. And I'm here with my good friend and guest, Dusty Klifman from Blue Eyes Below. Welcome
All right.
back to the show, Dusty.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Let's give it a minute for people to join. I apologize to everybody. I didn't get the end Dusty. I didn't get the advertisement posted for it. So I just sort of threw up the thing. But anybody who's a member is going to get notified that we're live. And there was quite a bit of interest in this, so we had quite a few people asking about the show. Couple of things, housekeeping wise. If you want to post questions or post comments, you can do so while we're talking underneath the show. We've already got 7 viewers, Dusty.
Okay.
So feel free to chime in and let us know you're here. Also, if you want to ask questions while we're going, you can feel free to do so. If it's an interesting question, we'll pose it to Dusty. But I would encourage you, if you have involved questions with an involved response, come to the Zoom room afterwards. We will be having a live Zoom room. I will post the link to the Zoom room right afterwards, and bring your favorite adult beverage, and you can get to meet Dusty in person and listen to us all talk shop. It's usually a pretty friendly, well-moderated group of people, and we usually run about an hour. So please feel free to join us for the Zoom room afterwards. All right, a few other housekeeping items. I have a few other guests lined up, but I don't have their dates exactly scheduled. I do want to let you know that I do have one guest, though, that is already slotted in, and a very exciting guest, a guy that I've known for many years, that has been kind of in a focal point in the Great Lakes and for a long time, and somewhat controversial in some circles, and that's Steve Liebert. Many of you will know of Steve from his work with the Poverty Island Gold, with the Captain Lawrence, but with most recently with the Griffin. And he has an excellent book that came out on the Griffin. And whether or not you believe that what Steve has found, the hull piece that has kind of made the rounds is the Griffin or not, you can't argue that the book is really pretty well done. He's an excellent historian and researcher, and has, I think, done a pretty nice job of telling the Griffin story. So Steve Liebert's going to be on the show, and we're going to be talking to him about what he's found, and he's going to tell us why he's convinced that that what he's found is the Griffin. So it should be a great show. That's going to be, I think, in about 2 weeks. So I have to look and get the exact date for you, but I'm going to post a good ad for that and really put it out there. So, all right. Why don't we get rolling? So Dusty's had a really busy season. He's done some amazing stuff this year, and I'm going to let him tell you about it. But before we get started, for those of you who don't know Dusty Klifman from Blue Eyes Below, I'm going to ask the usual question that I ask everybody, and that's on the show, and that's tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background. Where are you from, and how did you develop a passion for this? This is sort of an unusual and weird thing that not a lot of other people do, Dusty. So why don't you tell us about it?
Well, there's a lot to it, but I grew up inland. I did not grow up around the Great Lakes. I grew up in a farm town, Falmouth, McBain, Michigan. I didn't know about the Great Lakes, and I didn't know about the shipwrecks that are here. I was snorkeling in the Clam River behind my parents' house, in the lakes, the Lake Nassau, Lake Cadillac. And I mean, I thought that was just cool as can be, to be able to go under the water and see fish. I did get certified for a 13th birthday gift. And once I dove on my first little shipwreck in Travers, West Bay, there's just a little old tug there. And that was just the coolest thing. And it took off from there. I wanted to be able to capture those images and share it with people like my family, my parents, because they may never see that. As I went away to the military, I got to dive kind of around the world in a couple different places. But then when I came back, I started working for Consumers Energy here in Muskegon, pretty much right on Lake Michigan. Well, when I found out we had shipwrecks here and shipwreck preserves, and there was buoys on these shipwrecks that we could go out to, I I got a boat, just a little 16-foot aluminum Starcraft, and I went out and got to see these shipwrecks on my own, and I was able to film them. It was exciting. But then I learned we still have shipwrecks missing in the Great Lakes. So that spurred a whole nother chapter in that. And then there was deep shipwrecks that no one really sees because they can't dive to it or they can't get to it. And that's kind of where my path has gone. I like filming stuff that's hard to get to or things that people don't get to see. And I like to bring that back and share it with the world because people still want to see it. So that's kind of how I got into it, but I always had a passion for the water and photography, videography, and that brings us to here. I love the Great Lakes, and the shipwrecks here are some of the best in the world, and there's still more to find. So just trying to do my part and bring that to the people.
Very cool, Dusty. And I know people really find your sort of enthusiasm infectious. One of the things that I like about your work is you've brought in a lot of new people who, haven't really been part of our community. This tends to be sort of an aging baby boomer community, and everyone's got gray hair. And your work has really sort of appealed to a broader audience, right? You've kind of introduced a younger group to us, and we really appreciate that, and sort of through your social media influence as well. I, I won't ask, but I'll just say you have a lot of followers, and it's really helped our community. So thanks so much for all your contributions, Dusty.
Yeah, no worries. There are a lot of older divers. They have been on a lot of the shipwrecks I visit, but they have never seen the visibility like it is today. So they can still armchair dive and re-experience these shipwrecks that they once dove on. So I think that's really cool as well.
Definitely, definitely. So let's talk about some of your projects this year. I think one of the big ones that you had kind of had a list of things you wanted to do this year, and they were really pretty ambitious. And it sounds like you got to do most of them. And I think for me, one of the coolest wrecks that's been found in recent years, and just a pristine schooner, is the WC Kimball that Ross Richardson found in Lake Michigan. And you got a chance to dive that. That's amazing. I don't know of to anybody else that's been on it. Can you tell us what it was like?
Yeah, so that was a very good dive. We had good conditions earlier this spring. Just a perfect day. We had ambient light at 300 feet, and it's just this tiny little ship, 65 foot long. The Kimball sank in 1891, and it's just perfect. It looks like a model sitting there on the bottom. And we were really able to explore the whole thing because it's such a small ship, but it's just so pristine. So it was a great feeling of accomplishment to be able to actually do it. I had to get trained to dive deep enough safely and have the skills to do that, but then to be able to go down there and capture some really nice images and bring those back, I was very happy. So that was my first goal of the year. So to knock that out early in the season was, I was very happy about that.
I mean, the lighting is amazing down there, and lighting up the back of the ship like that, and showing the lifeboat with everything still in it. This is really one of the most photogenic wrecks on the Great Lakes. How deep did you say it was?
This is almost 300. And as far as I know, Ray Wilson and I were the second and third person on it. I'm not sure if anyone else has been on it, but either way, it was quite a treat to go see it, and we'll probably be back next spring to visit again.
Very cool. Yeah, this is one of the coolest pictures right here, I think, uh, with the stern lit up. One of the things that's so astounding about this little boat is what condition it's in. It sank slowly, and it's like a ship in a bottle. You just don't see ships that are in this state of preservation, and I think largely too because it's such a depth. When these ships are found in deep water like this, they're often in much better shape because they're not subject to waves and natural forces. And this one doesn't seem to have quite as many quagga mussels on it as a lot of them.
Yeah, and this was quite early in the season, but it is there is some wood that's just barren. It's really nice to see that.
Definitely, definitely. Um, how long of a dive did you do on it?
I think we had 20 minutes on this one on the bottom, and I think it was ended up being like 70 minutes runtime. This was in May, I believe, late April or early May, so it was still quite cold, but clear as can be. We had a perfect day with bright light, ambient light all the way down. It couldn't have been better.
I remember when Ross found this. It was quite an accomplishment because, if I remember correctly, he wasn't looking for it. He was scanning for other things and just came across this schooner out there, and it was pretty clear. Obviously after he saw what it was, he was able to identify it because there not that many vessels that fit the bill, but quite a find by Ross. So it's really kind of cool that you were able to get this level of photos and also there's some beautiful artwork that Cal Catrati did of it. He was part of the team with Ross, and the his drawings of it are just amazing. So if anybody gets a chance to see those, check them out. Anything else you want to say about the dive to the Kimball? Really a beautiful sight.
Nope, just ready to see such a vessel because see a lot as it was. So it was a good experience.
Very cool. So the next big target you had was a pretty famous wreck that was located by a friend of mine, friends of mine, Michigan Shipwreck Research Associates, and Valerie Van Heasten, Craig Rich and company, and that's the Hennepin. I remember when that was found too. It was quite a iconic find because she was, I think, one of the first self unloaders or the first self unloader on the Great Lakes, and then of course, she spawned a book um, eventually because she is so iconic. And you were able to conduct a scuba dive to this one too. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and how that all transpired?
Well, the film the
Dusty, I'm losing your audio. You're breaking up a little bit.
at 2 bars now. Any better?
Got you now. You're back. I missed the last 30 seconds or so.
Okay, I live out in the sticks. My apologies.
That's okay. We got you back now. Tell us again and repeat the last 20 seconds.
I had filmed a few shipwrecks that MSRA had found over the years out in that area. The HC Akeley, the SS Michigan, and I had always wanted to see the Hennepin. Well, I had never made it happen. So I wanted to either film it with the ROV or actually dive on it. So it just worked out that we used this as a workup dive So this was goal number 2 for the year. We use this as a workup dive for goal number 3, which we'll talk about next. But the Hennepin was pretty much the world's first self-unloader. It was a towed barge at that point of its life, but you can see the A-frame there, the conveyor system. The whole back end of the ship is just destroyed where it impacted the bottom. It pretty much ends at the back of the boiler, and the back of the boiler is open. But a tremendously good dive, about 240 feet deep, very intact otherwise. So we went out there and had another really, really good day with clear conditions. Did I lose you?
No, we got you.
Okay. Okay. So it just turned out wonderful. I'm a big fan of early season diving because of clarity. Even though it's really cold, the clarity and the photos you get are worth it.
I'll say there's some beautiful shots here. So in the middle here, what are we looking at? Is that the stern that's sort of broken up?
Yeah, so that's pretty much where the back of the boiler is, and that's all broken away from the impact when it sank.
And here's a beautiful shot. I'm assuming the bow with the capstan there. And what are we looking at that you're shining the camera or the light on there?
Ray's lighting up the front where that might be where the tow rope passed through.
I see. Oh, that's right. She was being towed.
Yep, and you can see a little bit of the rope trailing off to the right side of the photo. But there is a wheel visible back by the deck winch on the right side of the ship.
Boy, it's amazing how clear the water is now. For those that are new and that have just kind of been watching this stuff for the last 20 years or so, you get to see these beautiful clear shots. But for the previous 150 years that these things were on the bottom, there was 5 to 10 foot of visibility. That's the native visibility in Lake Michigan, what Lake Michigan was like for thousands of years. That's how it should have been, just because it's not a cold lake, and it's got a lot of it had a lot of suspended zooplankton before the arrival of the zebra and quagga mussels that cleaned it up like this. I think the jury's still out in terms of the ecological impact, whether that was a good thing, but it certainly has been good to divers. We've never been able to see, when I used to dive wrecks, obviously not this deep, but you'd go down there and you might see 5 feet, of the wreck, and you could zoom the camera in on one little area, but you couldn't get these big sweeping panoramic views like this, Dusty. These are just stunning.
Thank you. We are very fortunate today, but I mean, there is a downside. I did do a little bit of diving in Lake Superior this year, working with Ken Merriman for his project. And it was a completely different experience seeing shipwrecks with paint and actually seeing the artifacts not completely covered. It was very, very cool. So I'll be back next year for some more dives.
That's kind of where I cut my teeth, up in Lake Superior. And when I first moved to Milwaukee, back in the 80s, and started diving in Lake Michigan, there weren't really zebra mussels or quaggas. Certainly weren't quaggas. There weren't even zebras yet. And so I got to see kind of the way things were prior to that. And I kind of lived through that whole clearing up of the lakes. And it happened very quickly. It was surprising. We went from, within probably 5 to 10 years to having this sort of visibility. Big change. So one of the coolest things that you did, that a wreck that I'm not aware of anyone diving before, because it's just so bloody deep, and frankly what I consider to be a dangerous dive, just because to me anything over 300 feet is ridiculous, that you went on, is the John V. Moran. And as I understand it, you were training for this dive for years and years, and getting ready for it, and making sure that you were technically competent to do it, so that you didn't have any accidents on it. And we have lost a lot of tech divers, so Tell us a little bit about your preparation for this deep dive. And the Moran, again, is a wreck that was found by Michigan Shipwreck Research Associates. Very deep, I think 370 feet. How did you get ready for this? And then tell us about the dive.
Well, so we certainly aren't the first people on it, but there's been a small handful of people from MSRA's team that did the initial exploration, but I don't think anyone's been back since then. It has been a long time in the making, at least 3 years of trying to get ready for this dive. And this is one of the things that I didn't know if I would talk about it my entire life and never do it, or if I would actually do it. And thankfully, things just came together this year. I met the right people, and I got the right team together, and we were able to make this a very successful mission. So this is just something I filmed the Moran years ago with the ROV. Relocating it was one of my goals. So it took me a couple trips out, but I was able to find it and film it. Well, after I've seen it through the ROV, it was so good that I wanted to see it in person and lay a hand on the railing. And again, it was one of those things, like, it was just a big dream. I wasn't sure if I would actually ever do it because almost 400 feet is crazy. However, being on a rebreather is a little bit different. It's a very good machine, and it allows us to do some really great dives. We spent the entire spring and summer getting ready for this. You know, we started the workup dives first to do the Kimball, and then once we got that, we started doing the other dives like the Hennepin, the SS Michigan, and incrementally working our way up. Then we went up to Traverse City to East Bay, I believe, and dove on the wall up there, which goes from like 150 feet down to 560 feet. Well, then we went out there and got some good depth, and we got ready. So a couple days later, I think we went out to the Moran, and we had really good weather. Had a small team on board, and we made it happen. So it's smaller in person than what I thought. What I was able to see through the ROV, I don't know if it's the wide angle, but everything looked bigger. Well, when we get down there, and I look, you can see here the middle photo. I'm looking into that dining room with the table and chairs. The doorway is incredibly small. There's zero chance I would fit in there with all my side tanks. I actually had to tilt the camera sideways because of my lights to fit it through the doorway and then back to get that that image. But just the spaces between the pilot house area and the cabin were small. The foredeck of the ship was smaller when I shone the light on it. So a very cool experience. It's dark. It's a lot. It's like 5 minutes of falling through inky blackness. But once you get to the ship, it kind of collects the light pretty well from the video lights and stuff, and does a pretty good job. But it was a great feeling to accomplish this. You know, I couldn't really enjoy the dive during the time we were down there, and really understand what I was looking at. It was mission first. Then once we were on the boat safely, you could kind of decompress and realize the gravity of what you just did and take in all the sights and stuff as we looked through the photos and reviewed them. So very, very happy to accomplish that one.
It's interesting to see this dining room. This was a package freighter. You have a painting of it in the middle. There were photos. She was photographed as well. But that's a really ornate dining room. Was that just behind the pilot house?
It is. Yep.
And it's still intact and on there. She must have sank slow.
Yep. In the photo all the way to the right, you can see Ray is just over the puncture in the bow, and that came from the ice. She sank in February of 1899, and her sister ship, the Eber Ward, also shared the same fate. She sank by ice up in the Straits of Mackinac. But it's a very small puncture, and she took on water slowly and sank. So everything is completely intact. Every rail is there. The masts are standing. I mean, it's just truly jaw-dropping to see it in person and in photos.
Yeah, much like the Kimball, that we just showed, this is another example of a really, really pristine Great Lakes shipwreck that is unusual in its state of preservation. Really a tremendous site to visit, and something that not many people would get a chance to go to, just because it is, frankly, well, a dangerous dive. Can you tell me a little bit about what it's like down there? I mean, physically, what is it? What are the physical sensations like at a depth like that? Are you, experiencing any effects from, the nitrogen, or is that completely not a factor because of the rebreather and the trimix?
That's not a factor because for the depth we plan our gas to make it no chance of being narcotic.
So you're
So
completely clear-headed.
yes, so we have a very hypoxic blend, like a 10-70 mix, 10% oxygen, 70% helium. So you're very clear-headed, but you are very aware of how deep you are and how serious it could get in the snap of a finger. Um, you just gotta be able to task manage all the things, watching your PO2, your partial pressure on your rebreather. You're managing the time, and we had rehearsed this over and over and over, exactly the route we were going to take, the shots we were going to do, and the time that we were going to spend down there. So everything went perfectly. Uh, but in your mind, you know how serious it is. And, when you're done with the dive, you almost feel like you got lucky, but a lot of planning goes into it to make sure that it happens that way, that you're very successful and safe.
Sure.
Um,
So how long did it take you to come up from the time you left the wreck? What did you have, a 20-minute bottom time? How long did it take you until you were on the surface?
I think we had about 12 or 15 minutes on the bottom, and it may have been 70 or 90 minutes coming up. I don't know right now off the top of my head, but it was a short trip at the bottom for what we had coming up. But it really wasn't that bad because, I mean, I spent 3 years getting to it, so it was worth it.
That's good. It wasn't a really long hang time, because I've heard stories of people spending 3 hours, ascending from some of these really deep dives. But it sounds like you had a fairly short bottom time, and maybe it was the different mix. I've heard, and I'm no tech diver, and I think a lot of our viewers aren't, so I'm going to ask kind of naive questions. I've heard that helium is, like explosively decompressive, more dangerous if you ascend too quickly, even than nitrogen. Is that true?
I couldn't tell you about that, but if you descend too quickly, you're going to have some other
I mean,
issues
ascend too
as
quickly.
well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Because it's a lighter gas, I thought, maybe than nitrogen, and so it can cause the bends even worse. But people have been pretty. We haven't had a lot of bad accidents with people. I think it's because people that are doing deep dives on rebreathers are training so much. They're working their way up to it, doing so many dives that by the time they get down there, they're not only it's not only well planned, but they also have enough experience that they don't panic, they're calm. And I think that's the key to it, right? Is you've got enough, like how many dives did you do that last year or the year before, so that you were comfortable with this?
I couldn't even tell you, but it was a lot. But what one of the biggest things is repetition and doing it the same way every single time, so you have the same outcome. So even on a shallow dive, I'm wearing all my tanks because there's really no difference in a 100-foot dive or a 400-foot dive.
Ah,
The only difference is the amount of time you have to spend decompressing. But everything else is the same. Managing your suit gas, your PO2. That's the beauty of a rebreather. But you have to be proficient and do the same things every time, so you'll have the same outcome.
That makes a lot of sense that you would dive with the same rig, even if you're at 100 feet versus 400 feet, because you know your gear, you know your stuff. And yeah, it's repetition. And one of our posters said muscle memory. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. So I know where everything is by feel. I don't even have to look. That's the downside to the rebreather is you got a lot of hoses and stuff. My rig's behind me. I don't have a lot of vision. So everything I do is by feel. I have to be able to get to my bailout regulator, clip and unclip my tanks blindly, which is normal. But muscle memory is 100%.
That makes a lot of sense, Dusty. Yeah, I don't know too many people that have dived wreck that deep. There have been some very deep dives conducted on the Great Lakes, and 300 feet used to be sort of an extreme tech dive, and now people are doing that. I won't call it recreationally, but we have some technical divers who are. It's hard to call a tech diver a hobbyist because by that point it becomes a very, very serious hobby. But we have had people that are diving these 300-foot deep wrecks, on dive charter boats, So
a funny story is there's a little champagne bottle right here behind me. When Ray and I were at our last decompression stop, a bottle of champagne and a congratulation note came. The note is actually right there, that white one.
Cool.
Came sliding down the deco line and surprised the heck out of us. But that was really cool. It said, "Congratulations, Ray and Dusty, first dive on the Moran."
Pretty neat.
So
pretty neat, yeah. Dusty. Well, let's talk about another wreck. And this is a project that you and I and some of our colleagues did together. And it wasn't a scuba dive, but many of you probably heard about it or saw it on the group. And that is that Dusty gave me a call. I was kind of gobsmacked. I did not expect it. I was like taken completely off guard. And he said, "Hey, I'm coming over to your neck of the woods, and I'm going to try to put a camera down on the wreck of the Pere Marquette 18." And I was stunned because I was involved with the Pere Marquette 18 work with Ken Merriman and Jerry Eliason, and that was a treacherous wreck. We we hung the camera up on it, and a few other people have tried to get ROV footage of that wreck, and it didn't go real well. I won't go into the details for the people involved, but it's a tough site. The Pere Marquette 18, for those of you who, everybody here probably knows, right? In 1910, it was the largest vessel still missing on Lake Michigan, a giant train car ferry, 334 feet long. And, it sank after developing a pretty serious leak coming across the lake. And luckily they got on SOS. Other vessels were on the scene when its bulkhead failed and it catastrophically foundered. But it was way out there, like over 20 miles from shore. And so finding that wreck again was really difficult. But getting out to it can be really treacherous. I've been involved with no less than 4 different expeditions to find that wreck. And as it turned out, all of them were pretty far off the mark, because it is such a huge lake when you get out there. And I when I went out with Ken and Jerry to film that thing 2 years ago, I think it was, we couldn't even see shore that far out. You're far from shore. So when you called me up and said, "Hey, I'm going to go and put a camera on this thing," I was like, "Oh, okay." And it was late in the year, right? We did this in September, right, Dusty?
Yeah. So.
And it was getting cold. And so I said, well, we should probably let the state know, because in Wisconsin, we have a very active maritime archaeology program with Tammy Thompson and Caitlin Zant and others are very active in that program. And they like it if you file a permit. Not that you have to. They like it if you do it, especially if you're going to be deploying equipment to a wreck, like a drop camera. because there are other wrecks that have had ROVs lost on them in Wisconsin waters. So when Dusty, you contacted the state, and Caitlin Zant came out with us, and then my colleague Bob Jake came out with us, and it was an amazing experience for a number of reasons. And I want to say the first of which is that it went so smoothly. I was unbelievable. Your boat that I remember when you got that Park Service boat, and you were working on it and restoring it, is a really amazing platform to
We lost your audio, Brendon. Well, anyway, this photo's from we were out there filming, and okay. So Caitlin was actually doing a sight sketch next to me and watching on the screen as we were piloting and going around. So she did a nice sight map and wrote any things of interest, like the crumpled bow or things that they may have not known about. And then that would go into the report that they would have to do to close out the permit that I got.
Yeah, and then I'll show you that too. What was interesting about it was when we got it on site. I think one of the more interesting things was you had some excellent equipment, Dusty. You had essentially a Minn Kota trolling motor mounted on your bow that you were using to maintain station over the wreck. That worked really well. How did you? What made you decide to throw a trolling motor on the bow of that, and how did you know it would work so well?
Well, one of my coworkers, who is an avid fisherman, told me about it many years ago. When I first got started doing this, I bought an ROV, and that's where the name Blue Eyes Below comes from. It comes from my ROV made by Blue Eye Robotics, which is, am I on the screen or not?
I'll bring it up. Hold on.
So, so the name Blue Eyes Below comes from that guy right there, and so that's what I'm piloting under the boat there. Now, when I bought that, the issue became, how do you hold position when you film? The process of most of the shipwrecks I film do not have mooring buoys on them because people just don't go to them. So you would have to put a drop buoy to know where the ship was, and then you would have to go upwind and anchor. And sometimes you're anchoring in 300 feet deep. And I mean, it is a pain. And I'm a big fan of making processes better, simpler, faster, and more efficient. So when my coworker told me about the Minn Kota iPilot, I decided to invest heavily in it and give it a try. And this is the second boat that it's on, I believe, second or third boat I've had that I've had it on, and it works surprisingly well for holding a 24-foot boat in position, even in waves. So it allows me to do what I do. And in the case of diving on the Moran, we certainly did not anchor in 400 feet of water, and so we hovered directly over the site and went down the line that I'm holding in my hand there, and was able to just descend directly to the wreck, no messing around. And then when we were done, we come right up the line. It was right where we left it. Of course, we had someone on the boat. If something happened, they would be able to navigate and make sure that they were there for us. But a very good system that I've kind of developed and modified for my use over the years. This year, I did add the winch there on the side because I'm getting older, and after diving deep, you don't want to be pulling up line. So I can just stack the drum on the winch, and it can pay right into the crate. So nice and easy.
That's pretty cool. One of the things you guys will notice about this is if you're looking out at the lake there, You were actually looking towards shore there, I think. And there ain't no shore to be seen. But the other thing you'll notice is what a beautiful weather window we had. Dusty, you hit it out of the park with, it was probably about a 10-hour weather window and no more, where it had calmed down, it laid down, and then by the time we're getting out of there, it was starting to come back up. And just look at it, it's like glass, and we're like 22 miles, 23 miles from shore. And the other thing that's notable here that I thought was so impressive is you had a bunch of anchors on the end of this, so it's fairly heavy, but you had a strobe down on the bottom on that mounted on that line. In fact, more than one, and that proved to be so useful for the ROV for navigation that you could turn and see that flash almost anywhere on the wreck and orient. Tell us about how you figured that out.
Well, when we go down and dive, depending on visibility, because you never really know what you're going to get unless you send the ROV down first. So having the strobes just offers peace of mind in case something ever did happen to the boat. Now, the team I had with me, they know how to operate the boat. If anything happened, and if the line wasn't there when we came back, we would all just pop a bag. They would come get us. The strobe just adds peace of mind because it's a visual that you can see from pretty much anywhere due to the water clarity, to know that you're tethered to the surface is right there, right where you left it. It's easy to find. So I just try to minimize things that can go wrong, and I try to put things in place to help me be successful in everything I do. So this is just one of those things, adding a couple different strobes at different levels. So no matter where I am in the water column, I can see those and have a visual of where the downline is.
So, one of the other things that we noticed when we were out there is you ran the thing over with the side scan, and we knew this about the wreck, but it's plunged into the bottom on an amazing angle. There's only one other wreck I know that's like this, and that's the Hudson up on Lake Superior that Ken and Jerry also found. With all right, drawing a blank. But Craig Smith. But anyway, this wreck is plunged into the bottom like an arrow at a really sharp angle. And the bow, it's plunged in stern first. And as you can see here on the right image, the bow comes up at an extreme angle, and there's almost 100 feet between the bottom of the lake and the top of the bow. And there's just water column down there. And this wreck is really treacherous because all up and down both sides of it are lifeboat davits and torn railings. And so it is just like a porcupine full of spines just sticking out every which way but loose. And it's hard to navigate because it's not laying flat on the bottom. It's you can get underneath it, underneath the bow easily. And tell me a little bit about the challenges that how do you prepare for something like this, dealing with a wreck that's likely to snag you?
Well, this is not my first trip out to the Pere Marquette 18. I did try pretty much a year ago. It was very late, almost December, and I made the trip over, towed the boat all the way to Wisconsin, went the 20 some miles out, and it was pretty rough. Now, I didn't have the drop line on the last attempt, so I hovered over the wreck, was holding station, and I sent the ROV down. The problem is 500 feet deep is a very long ways down. It took me about 7 minutes. And during that descent, the ROV drifted off, and I'm not sure where it went because there was no visual cues. Well, I never saw the wreck, unfortunately. I think I was under it because there was a debris field of zebra or quagga mussels all around. So I know I was close, but it's so dark that you could only see 5 or 10 feet, and I never saw the wreck. So that I had a year to think about how to do it successfully. And so that helped me prepare and get the winch system, get the drop system with the strobe lights, the heavy anchors. So it makes it really easy with the iPilot. We find the wreck on the sonar, and then we put the boat in neutral, deploy the iPilot, and as we're holding position over the wreck is going to skew. It'll just be a long line, but you'll be able to tell that you're over the wreck. And then you're able to deploy the drop line down. And we had about 30 pounds of anchors just because of the depth. So I go all the way down until the line goes slack, and then pull it up about 5 feet so it hangs straight and true. So I have a direct line straight down to the wreck. And what we did, we followed it straight down, no problem at all. About 5 or 7 minutes later, we're on the bottom, and I gently look around because I'm down to the mud. Well, I turn to the left, and 5 feet to the side of me is the starboard side of the ship. It could not have gone any better. And then these images that are up on the screen, the middle and the right one, that's the pilot house. And that's actually at the back of the ship. It popped off, spun around, and it's down at where the stern meets the bottom of the lake. So it's spun around. If you look close, you can see the green tarnish on the doorknob that's open, but a very, very cool experience to tour the ship. That's been a couple years goal for me.
So Dusty, I remember I was encouraging you to fly the ROV right up to the door and look in, which you did. And you have much better video of this. This is really, we're not really showing the video. You can do that on your own channel. Do you have plans to do some sort of a release of the video, a mini documentary or something like that on your channel?
I think that would be a great winter project. I have a backlog of so many videos that I need to make this winter yet, but definitely, I think this one warrants a video about the exploration of it and maybe what went into it, kind of like what we're talking about, because it was no easy feat. It cost a lot of money to do this and a lot of time, but it went off really well. Thanks to you and Caitlin and Bob. It was nice to have a team out there. We were successful. We had a little bit of drama. Like Brendon said, there's snaggers all over that wreck, and it's so dark that it's hard to see everything until you're all up in it. A lot of davits everywhere that the tether can get under. And so things were going really, really well. Near the end of the dive, getting low on battery power, and we'd pretty much seen the entire wreck. Well, we were on the port side, and there was a room for one, so I kind of go down and look inside the room. Well, as I turn, I see the side of the ship just towering above me, and somehow I ended up inside of the ship unexpectedly. So that, caused some alarm bells because there is just stuff everywhere. So we got out of that and worked our way back to the stern. And when we terminated the dive, we started coming up, and Brendon made a comment that the tether is straight up and down. And real quick, while these photos are up, you can see the steel is crumpled here at the front of the pilot house from the impact. It must have hit so hard. And the other photo is the anchor is still hanging in place. Very cool to see that. So as we're making our way back, the tether is under 2 davits, actually. So we're down to like 5% battery or something like that. So I'm getting pretty stressed at this point. So I go back. We get the first bit of tether clear, no problem. I'm at 5% battery, almost 500 feet deep, and the tether is still going downwards because it's stuck under another davit. So we go down there, and at this point, I'm thinking I'm going to lose the ROV because we're so deep, the battery's low, we're tangled. So we get down, we could see the davit, we see the issue. Brendon pulls all the slack out, thankfully. So I turn and look at my tether, and I just maneuver the ROV, and we work together to free it. And it pops loose, and I come straight up. And the battery actually died partway up, so Brendon had to pay it in by hand. But we made it successfully. No loss of equipment. We got some great images, so I'm very pleased about this one.
And then, of course, then my next thing was after we got it up on the surface and we're gloating over our success, I was like, so Dusty, how long before will it take us to charge it before we do the next dive?
Yeah, I wasn't.
No, I think we'll quit while we're ahead, which turned out to be good advice because I'm obviously pretty free with Dusty's $20,000 ROV, and the weather was deteriorating. So he made a good call, and we decided to head in, and we headed in just in time because it was kicking up.
It was a very good day though, and I saw a weather window, and that's why I reached out to Brendon to see if we could do it. We had talked on the phone, and I was kind of getting some stuff ready, and I said, all right, yep, I'll see you in Wisconsin. I don't know if I said Wednesday morning. Well, I didn't realize it was Tuesday afternoon when we were talking, and I had to be in Wisconsin that night. So it was a pretty busy evening for me, and I ended up leaving at like 4 a.m. in the morning, or maybe even earlier to get there. It's about a 6-hour drive, so that's what you got to do. That's what it takes.
Well, and I think the lack of sleep probably added to the excitement for everybody involved. It was really just an amazing experience. And I think one of the things I'll say about it that I think from my perspective made this so unusual and memorable was just the fact that it went so smooth. We motored out there in, 30, 40 minutes we were on site, and we just held stationary, no anchors to deploy, to moor the boat. Didn't have to grapple for the wreck. We put the camera down, and this was one of the smoothest things I've ever done. I couldn't believe it.
I think we were out and back in 4 hours, Caitlin
yeah,
said.
That's right. Is this a spotlight, this thing that you...
That's from the top of the pilot
That's
house.
Right. The big spotlight is laying there in the mud.
And you can see a ventilator in the background as well.
So one of the things that's interesting about this wreck is that the bottom of the lake experienced liquefaction when the wreck hit. And there's a field of huge mud ripples, distortions that are probably 8 to 10 feet high, that run for at least 300 yards, 3 football fields length behind the wreck. It distorted the bottom so badly that's how you find it. You actually come up on these huge distortions of the lake bottom to the stern, and then you see the wreck, because I would say a good 50 to 80 feet of this ship is below the lake bed, below the bottom, embedded in this glacial silt and loam. And that's what's holding it up. And then when you look at the bow, that distortion on the bow that I showed earlier, the bow didn't hit anything. It's just the force of the ship hitting the bottom and then probably striking bedrock, I'm assuming, once it got through the silt. And then the weight of the ship accordioned the ship backwards on itself. And so the bow is actually bent upwards, even though it didn't hit anything. The bow didn't. So it just shows you sort of, the tremendous forces that were on that ship when it foundered.
Do you have a photo of the deck that was ripped away from the bow?
Let's throw that up.
Someone asked, do I have a website? Yes. So what most stuff goes on is Facebook here. So look up Blue Eyes Below, BLUEYES below. But I also have a YouTube channel and Instagram. So if you want to see some videos, you can check out stuff on YouTube as well.
So there it is.
Yep. So there it is.
And what you see there, obviously, you can see that, there's a bollard on a piece of, and it's on a piece of decking. The decking is pulled a good 10 feet back because the whole internal parts of the ship just shifted backwards. This shows it pretty well.
And the sides of the ship have almost become like a canoe. I had a straight-on photo of it, and they're just curved inwards. It's very close between the sides of the ship now because of the impact. It's distorted and deformed the bow so much.
Yeah, it really is an amazing sight. Well, we're coming up towards the end here. This was really probably, one of the most significant expeditions that, has been made certainly to the site since Ken and Jerry did the initial video. I wonder if this video is good enough to do photogrammetry with.
We can certainly give it a try.
Yeah, that might be something that that Ken Merriman might be able to do, certainly with it. If I know we've shared this with him, and you should all know that Ken and Jerry, we did this with their blessing, and they gave Dusty the coordinates, and I had the numbers too, but they had already, Dusty had already made an agreement with them to do it, so this was not, us just running out there to someone else's wreck per se. And then the state also was involved, the state of Wisconsin. So we did it all above board, and we showed a little bit of this at the WUAA Fall Symposium this last year, because we're all WUAA members, Wisconsin Underwater Archaeology Association, including Dusty. And so we did a little review of the expedition there. Dusty, anything else you want to cover about your equipment or anything before we wrap up and don't do the Zoom room?
Well, if anyone has questions about the equipment, I'm happy to answer. I know we touched on a little bit of how we do it, but technology allows me to do what I do. It just makes everything so much easier because of the components that I've outfitted the boat on. And this boat that I bought, I found it in a farm field a couple years ago. It's an old National Park Service boat, a 24-foot Penn Yan Avenger, a hardtop boat. Really an excellent work platform. This was from the Apostle Islands. Actually, it was for the National Park Service, and still has some of the stickers on it. So just a very solid boat with a huge fuel tank, like 115 gallons. The engine is very tired, so I'm doing an engine rebuild this winter. One of the funny things is on the way back, Bob Jake was on board too. And we still had 15 miles to go, and the engine starts squeaking. And I just subtly see Bob look back towards the engine. I just throttle back a little bit, but it's a really good boat, and I'm not afraid to drill holes in it. And if it doesn't work, I'll just patch it and fix it. At the end of the day, it was $500. It's way past that now.
A $500 boat we were in. Well, it sure didn't feel like it, Dusty. That's an excellent platform. You've done a lot of great work on it, so kudos.
Thank you.
Well, we're out of time. Folks, I'm going to post a link to the Zoom room right after this on the Great Lakes Shipwreck Research Group, and I welcome anyone who wants to join Dusty and me. Grab an adult beverage of your choice, and you get to meet Dusty in person and chat with him. And stay tuned. I will be posting the program probably sometime next week for Steve Liebert. It should be an excellent interview. Steve is a guy that not a lot of people have met. Not a lot of Great Lakes, not a lot of people from our group know him, and it'd be a good chance, for you to sort of see the guy and what he's really like. He's not crazy. He's actually a pretty smart fellow, and I think the group will enjoy hearing him, tell his reasoning behind why he thinks he's found the Griffin. He really is sincere about it. So everybody, thank you again for joining us, and hopefully we'll do a few more of these programs this year. I welcome people. I might just do a couple of these myself too, just because it is tough to get guests vetted, because we have to make sure you can connect, and then we have to plan what we want to show and all that stuff. But I do have a couple other guests that are lined up. Tom Farnquist, the founder of the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum and the Great Lakes Shipwreck Historical Society, is going to be my guest in December as well as Steve Liebert. So stay tuned for that. And I have a few other people that are in the works that I haven't gotten hard dates from yet. So thanks, everybody. And we'll see you in the Zoom room in about 5 to 10 minutes. Good night.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. See ya.